This is iFanboy Pick of the Week number 928, brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you and Xenomorphs. Hey, this is Josh Flanagan, and I just greeted you in a way I never greeted anybody in my life.
Well, happy to see them.
Hey, I'm here with Connor Kilpatrick.
Hello.
Connor Kilpatrick, that's him.
Yep.
This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 928. By the way, did you know that 928 is the exact number of hours that every single day this week lasted? Every day.
You needed those hours, so that's good.
It was a very long week, just a ton of stuff to do. And in my mind, everybody in the world had the same kind of week. Like, I could walk up to anybody and just be like, man, this week, right? And they'd be like, oh, dude. Has your week been okay?
It's busy, for sure.
Yeah.
Not quite to your level, but definitely busy.
Yeah. It's not exactly helped by the fact that I am watching playoff games every night.
Well, that doesn't help. You're up till 1 o'clock in the morning.
They're all so close. It only happens once a year. I'm interested
watching one of the
in
games
something.
and it was like 10 p.m. and I was like, oh, geez, is Josh watching this?
I was. Well, actually, I was walking around and cleaning up at that point, but I could hear it. And you were like, this Jokic start is insane. And I was like, I can tell that's going on. You could eventually you listen long enough, you can just hear by the crowd and the announcer what's going on, just in the tone of it. Anyway,
I felt for you in that moment.
This isn't about that.
No.
Every week, one of us picks the balls they liked. That's very unlike you to put balls in the script for nowhere.
I script bombed you. It's been a while since you script bombed.
Yeah, it's good stuff. The balls that they like best from their stack of comics. We call that the pick of the week, parentheses balls. I added that. We're going to talk about those balls, other balls from the week. This is so beneath us. We really don't do a lot of lowbrow.
No, but, that's the best script bomb is the lowest brow.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I have a 10-year-old boy and a 14-year-old boy, and I'm not averse to low.
This is their favorite part of the show right now.
They have no idea that there's this show. I heard my son brag again about the YouTube show we did, making no mention of anything else. It's like, I was on it. And I was like, wow. They do another show. I don't care. I don't care about it.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah.
Actually, yes, it is.
Okay, this has been the worst beginning of a show, or the best. There will be spoilers for the comic books that we talk about this week. We try to be responsible, but we can't be responsible. That's my point. Exercise caution about that. Thankfully, with the smallest of mercies, Connor had to pick this week, not me.
I feel like we always screw around in the opening whenever we got a packed show. So we have a lot to get through. Hopefully we can. So the irony of this week's pick is that I almost completely missed it. The pick is Uncanny Valley number 2.
That's very unlike you as well.
We talked about the first issue because it was Patron Pick, however long ago. And Josh and I were talking earlier in the week and we were just swapping pull lists. We don't always do that. We've actually rarely do it, but we were just discussing how many books we had to read and you sent me your list. I sent my list and I looked at your list and I was like, wait, Uncanny Valley? Oh shit. But I'd almost finished reading my books and I could have made the pick before realizing I'd forgotten it.
So what was interesting is that, first of all, that's incredibly unusual. Mm-hmm. Second of all, I kind of barely caught it because I was looking through and I was like, what is that title? That sounds familiar. And I went, oh, right, this. And so when you said you'd missed it, what I thought was, that was pretty good. That one was pretty good.
Well, we talked about this last week, or a week before, about how our brains have been rewired. And I feel like issue 1 was in 2023. I just don't, felt like a long time ago.
I actually didn't have that experience.
Well, I just mean in terms of thinking about it coming out. Mm-hmm. For books like this that aren't in the regular weekly grind of books we read all the time, I've got to really have a couple issues under my belt before I remember to look for it. Kind of like the Displaced we'll talk about later. Now I look for it. But the second issue, I had to be like, oh shit, that book.
Right. No, absolutely understand.
By the time you get to 3 or 4, then I'm remembering to look for it. I'm excited about it. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it goes. Anyway, Uncanny Valley number 2 from Boom Studios. Tony Fleeks on story, Dave Wachter on art, Pat Brousseau on letters, who's all over this week's rundown. This is the story of a young boy, the son of a single mom nurse, who finds out that his parentage, his lineage, includes cartoon characters. His mother's father is an old prospector cartoon character. And last month, or whenever the fuck it came out, they got attacked by cartoon crows. His mom really seemed dead in that issue.
They just moved on with that.
Not only is she not dead, doesn't look any worse for the wear. No scars, no bleeding, no bruising, no cuts.
Just knocked out.
Being attacked by dozens and dozens of cartoon crows, but whatever.
Cartoon crows that, if I remember correctly, had somewhat of a dubious racial origin in the cartoon world.
In our world, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah. This issue was mostly just the grandson hanging out with his grandfather and talking.
Hanging out is a light way to put it. They were on the run.
Well, they're on the run, but the two of them talking. They're at a diner, they're in a car. Then they get attacked by basically the coyote, Wile E. Coyote. There was a lot of interesting, fun things here where the grandfather teaches the son to sort of become part cartoon. Thought that was a really nice scene.
I thought the explanation of there's tunes everywhere and most people can't see them, but kids can or you can or whatever. It's a way of, establishing the rules.
Right.
And I thought it was done pretty well.
He says basically, if you ever see a weird looking guy, like if his ears seem too big or his nose, which happens to everyone, by the way, your nose and ears keep growing.
He's going full tune.
That's just a tune person. Anyway, then the second half of the book is them fighting Wile E. Coyote, which I thought really played with the tropes of the Looney Tune cartoon really well, including them falling off a cliff and their grandfather teaching his grandson how to walk on air.
That was my favorite part. He's like, don't look down, do your whistle, be calm. I can't believe we fell. He's like, oh yeah, you never make it all the way. And I was like, that is true.
And then later on, it's the classic paint the tunnel onto the brick wall or the rock wall bit.
Never a better gag in the history of cartoons.
They're just having a lot of fun. And then Dave Wachter is doing some incredible style mixing here where he's drawing, the people in realistic style, but then there's the cartoon elements that blend seamlessly into it, especially the scene where the kids' ears become cartoons. Like it's a sort of a seamless drawing. Also his eyes as well, with two different styles on the panel.
I think maybe the most impressive thing about it is that mixing of styles and the flat color versus the sort of gradient, shaded color. I don't know. It makes it fun. It almost works because they are both cartoons. That's interesting for some,
Right. It's not a photograph. The kid's also a cartoon, just a realistic cartoon.
It's Scott McCloud's whole thing. Like, this would blow his mind. Like, do a chapter on this, Scott.
Right. We talked about Dave Wachter last time, but even just regular, I'm putting regular in quotes. Look, when the anvil gets dropped on the car, I mean, look at the drawing of that car coming apart. I mean, when the anvil hits, the whole front of the car is crumpled, the wheels are coming off. Like, that's a really good and probably a really fucking annoying drawing.
It's a little cartoony. Like, look what the wheels are doing. I mean that in a good way. And then you got Yosemite Grandpa turns into a missile coming out of the window.
Right.
It's really spectacular.
I mean, this is very inventive. We talked about this last time. It's unlike anything else I'm reading. It plays on, and to be fair, Generation X nostalgia for these cartoons that we had when we were kids. And look, people before us had them too, but we really grew up on these Looney Tunes cartoons. And
if you're 10 years younger than us, I don't think you could understand like how omnipresent these cartoons from the 30s, 40s, and 50s were when we were kids.
Right. We didn't have to go to the picture show to see them. We saw them every day after school or on Saturday morning.
They were all over the place all the time. And my kids don't know what any of it is, but it ran constantly. And I remember like sort of understanding finally at one point, I was like, oh, these are old.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that's interesting about that is that, first of all, this could be terrible. Like as a concept, to me, this is all about the execution because the concept really could go either way, but the execution is really strong. But what I was going to say is that because we know the rules of these cartoons already, it saves a lot of time.
Right.
For us.
True. Absolutely.
They say, no, it works like this and be like, we know the cartoon rules. There are cartoon rules for these kind of cartoons. And so, we get to hit the ground running to it. We're ahead of the characters in the show.
Right. We know more than the kid does. Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. This takes place in the past, right?
I don't remember.
I'm almost positive that it's like the 90s or something like that. Because if this was current, this kid wouldn't know what any of it was.
No, she's got a smartphone, the mom.
We talked about this before. I remember.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. But page 6, she's got a smartphone. It could be a couple years ago, but it's definitely 2000s.
All right.
There's also a bit of a it could be a mystery, it could be nothing, where they're talking about his parentage or lineage. And the grandfather says, you're half cartoon. He says, no, I'm a quarter cartoon. And he goes, right. But maybe just lunatic old prospector cartoon, or maybe there's something else going on there.
I also liked that the grandfather, he's not full silly.
Right. He knows there's trouble here.
He knows there's trouble, and like he can do the cartoon shit, but he doesn't really act ridiculous. He's taking the danger seriously. The things he's saying are straightforward. There's no gags about the way that he's communicating. At no point, does he see something going, oh, and his eyeballs pop out. That's not what's happening, which is interesting, just as a choice.
It's a very good book. And so now...
It's a very good book.
I will be more cognizant of seeing it on the pull list, hopefully, when issue 3 comes out, because it takes me a couple.
What a surprise and a treat it is. I mean, I wouldn't have thought.
It is, and, Boom is having a little bit of a renaissance for us. We're reading several Boom books. We're talking about a second one on this show later. And, for a while, there was nothing there that we were really all that interested in, but now there's a couple of things that are happening there that are interesting.
I really like that. I hope... it's like you hope it works out for them because I don't want to. You read a book like this, like, oh, this book's great, and you're like, it sells 4,000 copies.
No, they're doing well. I just actually did lunch with our buddy Philip, who runs Boom.
Oh, it's fantastic. There's smart people all over comics, and they don't always get to do the books that they think are best.
Right.
And so it looks like they're getting a chance to sort of greenlight some great books.
They've always been really well run as a company.
Yeah.
They have really smart people there. They have those YA books do really well for them. They've got a really popular James Tinian book. that we don't read, but that's really popular. They have that Keanu Reeves book. It sells 1 million copies. Boom is doing interesting stuff right now.
Booming.
So if I hadn't picked Uncanny Valley, it was probably going to be G.I. Joe Real American Hero 306. And I don't really have a strong reason why, other than it was a very weird week that didn't feature lots of very strong books.
You know what was funny is that, like, at the beginning, I had to readjust that it wasn't Energon. Like, the first page is Zartan going through the swamp, and I was like, I thought Cobra Commander was there. He was looking for Energon. I was like, oh, wait, this isn't that.
Right.
Which I was happy about. Like, I like the other stuff, but I was really happy that, like, no, we got Roots G.I. Joe. I will tell you, though, I loved this issue. First thing I read, and I read it mostly because I was excited about it, and I didn't want to wait.
Right.
That's how I am with most of these books, by the way. I know that you like to leave your favorite books for the end. When the Joe books come in, I read them as soon as possible. Sometimes that's earlier than most people get to, because I'm so excited.
My system is very complicated, but usually I read all the indies first, and so that includes the Joe books. And so I usually read them pretty early on.
One thing in here, one thing happened that I hated.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what it is?
Is it Talking Snake Eyes?
It's Talking Snake Eyes. Because I keep forgetting, and then she says, so tell me, Snake Eyes, have you ever this? And he goes, nope. And I'm like, what the fuck's he doing?
Yes, every time it happens, just because we've lived for 40 some odd years with a Snake Eyes that couldn't talk, and we totally missed out on Snake Eyes getting cloned, and therefore not having the damage to his body that keeps him from talking. I still think he should talk like Cassie, old Cassie from Batman, and only say 1 or 2 words.
Well, he is here.
Well, there's one point he says more than that.
First answer is nope. His response after she says a bunch of stuff is, And then he does say, you know, she's like, that's quite an array of weaponry. And he's like, it's just tools, Scarlet. The mind is the real weapon.
That's the one.
Yep,
I was like, that's too many words.
Yep.
Too many words.
He's too zen. Like, he's not going to explain stuff. You're right. He should be kind of grunting. If nothing else, like, he's not used to talking. I assume that his mind is current.
Who knows? We really missed all that. I have no idea what's going on with him.
But the other side of it is, I love how wacky that shit is. You know what I mean? Then you could be like, well, from what era did they copy his mind to a clone body? And, like, I know that because it's Larry Hama's, it could be anything. And there's no right or wrong. It's great.
I like the whole silent sequence of him training. That was really well done. I thought I would miss Chris Mooneyham a lot, and I did because I really like his work, but Paul Pelletier filling in on this arc.
I don't think I even noticed.
He has a MD Bright quality to him, whereas Mooneyham has a sort of Andy Kubert
you're right.
quality. And, you know, MD Bright was, for me, one of the seminal G.I. Joe artists. I haven't gotten up to him yet in my reread of the original series, but he brought to me a new level of artistry to the original G.I. Joe books, and Paul Pelletier has a very similar style. So I liked seeing that.
You know what was a great thing in this? Was Destro sitting in his chair.
I'm up to issue like 60 or 70 in the original series, and almost the entirety of the book is just Cobra infighting. They almost fight each other more than they fight G.I. Joe. And so this carries on here where, you know, Serpentor and his crew with Dr. Mindbender is up against Destro and Baroness and now Zartan for control. And it just, that's a theme that never goes away in these books, is that Cobra, maybe they could win if they just stopped trying to backstab each other for leadership and just took on G.I. Joe.
I mean, here, watching the nerd shit, high level nerd shit, but like the Japanese army and navy hated each other. Right. In World War II. You know, the German military was completely at odds with itself and fucked up. It's a thing that happens. You know, it's like the bad guys can't get that.
Well, it's human nature.
We just said the same thing about the U.S. Army.
The U.S. Army was also.
Yeah.
Different divisions are all fighting for control of power and money and everything.
Nimitz hated MacArthur.
I thought this was fun. I thought it looked terrific. I liked basically everything that happened. The robots are ridiculous, but I love them. But also you felt sort of the tension in, is it Dawn? Is that her name?
Her parents?
Moreno. Her parents trying to escape Springfield, but they get stopped by the cops, and then there's a hiss tank, and then the car gets shot up by the cops. I thought it was really
You tell me, because you're farther than I am, and you've been in Springfield. I really love the fact that, like, they start to leave, and you're like, oh, okay, well, they're in this town, and then, like, you realize that, no, Cobra is in charge of the town. And not, like, not, like, hidden. Like, there's Cobra troops and his tanks going around. It's not like a subterfuge of any kind.
You'd think someone from the outside would see this.
Yeah.
You know?
It's in, like, Vermont, right? I mean, it's not.
Yes, it's in Vermont. It's totally in Vermont. Bernie Sanders is their senator. That must drive them crazy.
Doesn't look like Vermont.
No, there's no mountains at all.
Like, it literally looks nothing like. I've spent a lot of time in Vermont. I've never seen a neighborhood that looked like that. I suspect whoever drew the beginning,
it always has looked like a suburb in the Midwest. Always.
Yes, it does. That's what it looks like. You think Frank Miller got to Marvel and was like, by the way, it doesn't.
I don't know what you're doing with Springfield here, but that is not what we look like. Is that Zanzibar? Is that the name of one of those dreadnoughts?
Okay, so there's Naugahyde. Naugahyde has the hat.
Right. He's
There
the
was a
Safari.
Zanzibar. I can't remember
Zanzibar's
who
the guy
it
with the
was.
long mustache and the eye patch, isn't he?
I'm trying to find it. I think you're right.
It's Blowtorch and Xander and Zarina. Not Zarina. Xandar and Zarana, and then
Nagahide is the hat and the mustache. You're right. Zanzibar has the long mustache. He had like some sort of swamp buggy thing, some sort of boat, I think.
I love this book. I do.
Who's off to the left, though, in front of Xandar? I remember him, but I don't. They added a lot of Dreadnoks who really didn't make an impact.
Oh, sure. I mean, the whole expansion of the toy line, especially later on, they added a whole bunch of characters.
Let's see, different Dreadnoks. Go ahead. You talk about the next thing. I'm gonna members.
I went to a mental place with JoJo.
I believe it's Monkey Wrench.
Monkey Wrench. Yes.
Monkey Wrench.
Yes.
Nope, that's not Monkey Wrench. Nope.
No?
Nope. Monkey Wrench looks a lot like Torch.
Oh.
He had a beard and a vest.
He's probably in there.
So we got Monkey Wrench, Thrasher, perhaps?
Could be Thrasher.
It's Thrasher. That's Thrasher. Road Pig.
Road Pig was the big dude with like the flat top.
That's definitely Zanzibar.
Yeah,
so
that's
you
definitely
You
Zanzibar.
called that one. Boy, the thing is that there's a certain point where we stop paying attention. So I'm going to just read them, and we are going to move on to the next book. Zartan, obviously. Zanya, second in command. Who's Zanya?
Who's that? That must be a later character.
She's a Dreadnok character. Zartan's daughter. She'll show up in the comics at some point. Maybe? Well, okay, well, whatever. Zarana. What it says is Zartan, overall leader. Zanya, second in command. Zarana, former second in command.
Uh-oh.
And then Xandar, twin to Zarana. Buzzer, Ripper, Torch, Monkey Wrench.
I forgot the whole bit with Xandar, and we have to move on, is that no one would ever remember him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, he was his camouflage. Sounds like a patron power, but it was like if they walked into the room right now, Josh, and had a conversation with you, and they left, you'd be like, "Oh, I just talked to Zarana, and I think there was someone else here too. I don't remember." Like that was his thing. Like no one would ever remember him, but he didn't like that. It made him mad. No one ever could remember.
Okay. I just got to read this list, and we're gonna move along. So these are gonna be familiar, and then very not. Ripper, Torch, Monkey Wrench, Thrasher, Nagahide, Road Pig, Zanzibar, Burnout, Rugrat, Machete, Death Metal, Crusher, Heart Wrencher, Chop Shop, Demolisher, and the Dreadhead Cousins, 2 sets of 3 brothers, all identical. Billy Bob, Cletus, Joe Bob, Otis, Roscoe, and Vance.
I don't like anything you just said. Those clearly are all from later in the run after us.
The next list is the Dreadnok's vehicles. I'm not reading it, but you need to know that.
Alien, Black, White, and Blood, number 4. This is the final issue of this miniseries. And I thought, again, the main story, Utopia, from Colin Kelly, Jackson Lansing, and Michael Dowling, I thought was the most interesting, where you have the android who has spent over 100 years contemplating what to do with the xenomorphs as they take over the flying communist utopian ship, and decides the only thing to do is to let them have the planet they were originally going to go to and create a communist utopia planet. And he just, instead of, we think about to kill them, instead she lets them loose onto the planet. And I thought it was a very interesting and bizarre and un-alien type story, because at one point the android's just sitting there contemplating. You just see xenomorphs in the background just doing shit.
Yeah.
It's like, what are they doing? Just walking around like it's an office.
And at the end, they kind of walk out. I was like, is anything going to happen? It's like, no, they're just like, so I guess we're home. But they don't talk. They only growl, and they have their teeth that are always doing the same thing. This was a spectacular story.
Yeah.
It's almost like it would be awesome to see this as, it won't be because the way it works. That's an Eisner story to me. It's in contention. Great story. Super thoughtful, but based on a licensed character. And it had all these other like highbrow concepts and lowbrow concepts, and is beautiful. It ended in a way that made sense and worked, but you didn't expect. The aliens, they're not the bad guy in this. You were left to think one way, and that's the reversal of the whole thing. It was a wonderful story.
We talked before about how there's, really only a couple of kinds of alien stories. And it's usually like dumb humans make dumb decisions and get killed by aliens. And it's some variation of that. But this was a different one, and I like that. Yeah,
and it was a reinterpretation of the idea. An idea that isn't bad, but they just did it. And it can, again, that can also backfire, but it was great. It was really fun.
I didn't love the Brian Hill story, Crisscross Brian Hill. I thought there was some storytelling problems.
Was it like all a dream, or was it flashback? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the scariest thing about any of the alien stuff is the people who are all trussed up and not dead in alien goo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to say all the Weyland-Yutani executives are the scariest people in all those stories.
Nope. They can do a lot of things to you, but not that. That's the worst. I'm wrapped up. I have aliens planted in me, and I'm saying, help me at your face. And you can do nothing? Oh, that's nightmare shit.
The final story called Mother from Pornsock Pichet. I butchered that.
Pichet?
Pichet.
Wow. We're going to get a letter.
I thought that had some really interesting concepts in it. The whole thing happening in a place that built the android, so there's all these floating faces around, was creepy. I thought the floating alien acid blood was a good device.
I thought that too. I was like, I've never seen that. That's pretty good. Because as we know, many space sci-fi properties need to ignore the zero gravity because it creates too much shit they have to deal with.
Right, too many problems.
Right.
And then it all becomes about this girl who's basically a psychopath and decides that humans need to die, so she helps the aliens.
Well,
the xenomorphs kill.
It's not too far from the first story in that, like, who's the real villain here? You know, who's ugly? And because she'd been raised in a vacuum of sorts, you know, like, she chose to see it a different way. And I guess it's a little more black and white than that, but who knows?
I liked it. This miniseries, I thought it was fun.
Well, yeah, it punched above its weight. And I would be remiss, and I'm sorry, this is the thing. This is the mode we're in. The G.I. Joe transform as an alien. Aliens, What If, number 3 of 5. This is the What If Paul Reiser's character was still alive and has this crazy story going on. This is so good. It has gotten wackier and dumber and funnier as we've gone along. There's so many unexpected little weird things in it. At one point, the face hugger that they call a face hugger, I wasn't sure if that was just what we said, but it's that jumps up and it's in the air and it's like, it's clearly a vagina.
I mean, it was always that.
I know, but the drawing is in no, like, I can see where the reference material came from, and it was a website you can't see at work. But, like, there's a funny old synth model that he's working with. The guy's daughter hates him, and Paul Reiser's just Paul Reiser here. And It looks like him, and it sounds like him. You know, like, at first I was like, I don't know. And I'm all in. I loved this book.
How many issues is it? 6?
It's 5. It's 5 issues.
Okay.
You know, where this is the third one. If you're like an alien nerd and you cannot take it super seriously, like, it's like an alien comedy of errors, which is weird, but it totally works. It's great.
So Redcoat number 2, this is the second issue of the Jeff Johns Brian Hitch, immortal British mercenary from the Revolutionary War story. And I think in the beginning of this issue, I thought, I don't know if I like this. Mm-hmm. The middle, and I'm someone who likes phonetic dialogue, way too much phonetic Albert Einstein dialogue.
You go, I'll talk after that.
If he's going to be talking that much, you got to really tone it down, I think. But then by the end, I thought, this is just dumb enough. And it goes through all of the things I like. Mm-hmm. I think I like it.
Okay.
And that's where I ended with the issue.
I'm in a very, very, very similar track. So it starts out, and you're right, phonetic dialogue, like goofy, like, was ist this over here?
If he's going to talk a little bit, that's fine, but he talks the most in the book.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
And it's bad. Like, it's bad German phonetic dialogue. And I have decided to look at that as a strength because this is pulp. If you want to imagine them doing this in the 30s or 40s, that's what they would do, and that's what it is. It's also terrible British dialogue. Like, this isn't how these people would talk. And I know that I have listened to roughly 80 hours of Patrick O'Brian books. And so I do have an idea about how people would have spoke from that time. But I also, like, halfway through it, I was like, I don't know if I can deal with this. And then I went, shut it off. And go, like, it's a dumb movie. And
right.
So the villain, or sort of the nemesis is probably more correct, is revealed in this. I don't have to give it away because if you haven't read it, it's a really fun reveal. Is revealed, and I went, oh, it's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That's what occurred to me. And by the end, I was like, I think I liked that a lot. Like, I spent a lot of time in the middle going, I don't know about that. And then at the end, I was like, I really want to read more. It was a very interesting process.
So now we're in the Gilded Age. You know, the Redcoat guy, he's got a young child, Albert Einstein, as a sidekick. They end up in New York. They're in the Gilded Age Society of New York. I mean, this is all stuff I love.
Also, like, he went into the party. I was like, you're not making it into the party.
I was like, they should get clothes that would match the party.
Have you seen Downton Abbey? If you wear the wrong shoe buckle, like, everybody is aghast.
The entire room would have turned and looked at this ruffians who walked in.
Yeah, absolutely. He's unshaven. The lady's totally fine with them being there. She's like, oh, hello. I'm like, nope. But that's the thing. I had to let all of those thoughts go.
Right.
And let it be what it is, and then it works.
The antagonist reveal is fun. The lady is the daughter of J.P. Morgan. It's just like, fine, Jeff, do it all. Do all the things I'm interested in.
Yep. In, like, totally pulp style, though.
Yes. In over-the-top pulp style.
It's like barely historically accurate.
Which is great, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it involves immortal science cults who were trying to make Ben Franklin immortal, and by accident that made this dude immortal.
I also, and we've been talking a lot about story, I think this is fucking great Brian Hitch.
It is very good. It is very
This is
good.
maybe the best Brian Hitch I've seen in some time. There's a scene where there's a fight at the beginning, and like Redcoat it's a double page spread. I don't believe it's anatomically correct, but he's kicking a guy in the face. There's a fight going on behind him. There's bodies flying everywhere. Some are in the foreground, but everything is, even the boots look good. Really, I wouldn't think, because we always think when we talk about Brian Hitch, we talk about like gigantic space battle fleets and all this stuff,
Yeah.
but this is just on the ground, and he's putting everything into the Redcoat looks great. All the details these are very different than the sort of superhero
Right.
Brian Hitch, but also like it's a guy I recognize.
Yeah, no, it's very good.
Fun.
And he's doing a lot of different things here. He's doing Gilded Age Society. He does a giant double page spread ballroom shot.
The lighting in that from Brad Anderson on colors is wonderful.
Yeah.
That candlelit sort of yellow glowy.
I got to believe he's enjoying drawing this stuff he doesn't normally get to draw.
He's got to be. It's just too fun and energetic. And it's just like there's no shortcuts. It's great. Like, and if you look, it says inks by Andrew Curry, but it also says Brian Hitch. So it seems to me like speculating, but Brian kind of overdid it and needed help to finish it in time, so I had to bring in an inker almost.
Right.
And I don't think the work suffers for it. We've said this many times. There's certain artists who benefit so much from having a different inker come in, and I think that Brian Hitch is one of those guys for sure.
Sometimes people ask us, are there books you guys read that you just don't talk about on the show? So yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, we only talk about 7 to 10 books on the show. We both read, anywhere from 12 to 25 books a week. So
yeah.
A lot of books don't get talked about. Sometimes you read a book because you're interested in the story or for whatever reason, but there's not a lot to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Dark Ride falls into that category. And this week we had Dark Ride number 12, which is the final issue of this series by Joshua Williamson and Andre Bresson, the team behind, what was the name of that book?
Oh, Birthright?
Birthright.
Wow.
This is Image, that was Image. And, I enjoyed this book, but
they're both Skybound.
I didn't have a lot to say about it.
I was shocked that you were I'm not surprised that you read the beginning. I'm shocked that you continued with it, and I had no idea. It just didn't seem like a thing that you would keep reading.
Well, it's, I like the team. I like this team together. The idea of sort of a demonic Walt Disney was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they had said this series is going 40 issues, I might not have stuck with it, but
sure.
At 12, I
didn't know. I don't think I really knew what it was going to, like how long it was going to go or whatever. I know that I didn't love it.
No, it's not great, but I enjoyed it enough.
I did keep reading it. Like it was curious enough, and I liked the main character. I liked he was very nuanced. I found that the story with the father, the Disney guy, was compelling because they really like held back on the details of it. And at the end of the day, like it wasn't breaking any ground, really. But it was a well-told story. I think, Josh Williamson, he's not one of my favorite writers, but I like him a lot, and I always give him a chance. I mean, his work. I guess that makes somebody your favorite writer, but he's got so much weird range.
Totally.
He's the most Jeff Johns writer they've got at DC on those superhero characters.
Right.
And I mean that with the most respect possible. And then he goes over here and does this, and I guess Jeff Johns is doing kind of the same thing. But he's done books like this all along, certainly before he was working at DC, and he's got his own voice. And there's something compelling about it, although I can't really put my finger on it.
I agree.
He really cares. Like I just know I've known him for years and years, off and on, but like he really cares about his books. And I think that shows there is a thoughtfulness and an effort put into them. I think
he's also really into, from the essays, theme parks. And so that was part of this book was, this demonic Disneyland and all the behind the scenes of running a park. And there was enough interesting stuff there to get beyond what I'd normally say is I'm not really into, horror, demonic, possession stuff. But I liked the series.
And Andre Bresson is a great artist. Yes. I can't believe he hasn't been snapped up by the big two yet. I assume that these books do well enough that he does pretty well for himself, is my guess. And he's working under the Kirkman system, and Skybound books aren't hurting, is my thought.
Right. So we had Briar number 5 this week from Boom again. I didn't know this was happening.
Nor did I.
I didn't really remember how the first arc ended of Briar. We read it. Christopher Cantwell was the writer. Was Alex Linz the artist on the first arc? I thought the art looked different.
I don't think so. I think it's a different artist. I knew that like the first one is, Sleeping Beauty or whoever wakes up and a lot of time has passed and the witches have taken over. I didn't love it, but I do have a I believe in Cantwell situation for the most part. I will go through with his stuff and read it. I knew that the end of the last one was like, we're going to take a break and come back, but I almost felt like I'd missed one and I was like, oh, it's 5. We're good. It was a very different book than the one we left, was my thought.
Yeah, it almost felt like another number 1 for a different book. Like you could totally pick this book up.
Sure.
And start here and not have to worry about what happened prior to that and be fine, I think.
I really liked it.
Yeah, it was
especially
fun.
compared to the first volume, which had value, but I didn't really like the shift, the time jump that took place in this, where the characters got to develop without us having to necessarily see them go through everything. I thought was really interesting. I like the status quo of where this book started and where we're at. And there's a lot of contrast in here between what is a swashbuckling hero and what they were actually doing.
Right. So the first arc was really playing up the Sleeping Beauty aspect of her, finding her way in the world after having woken up and finding allies and friends and enemies. And I believe, if I remember correctly, by the end of that arc, she had like a little crew.
Yep.
And so here we've jumped time and they're basically a little mercenary crew.
And they've all bonded already and they know and they trust each other. And so you don't have to go through that. Whatever the adventure version of will they, won't they? Like, no, these people are teams. This is the stuff that's going on. I would say that if it came down to any factor, it was more fun. It was more fun than it had been.
It was more fun, and it felt familiar in a fantasy way. This was a ragtag mercenary team taking on jobs. They're poor. They can barely afford to eat, and they get stiffed by their clients, and they're just trying to get by, and they're just trying to survive the best they can. And I thought it was a really fun issue. I was surprised.
It really was.
I read it on a whim because I was like, well, I didn't love the first 4, but I'll just check it out, and I was glad I did.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very aligned this week, have you noticed? The Displaced number 4.
Boom again.
Boom again, right. I really look forward to this book. I don't remember it until it shows up. I go, oh, right, this one, because there is a great mystery going on here. I don't necessarily remember all the characters, but I think it's written very personally, and I'm just really into it. I really want to see where it's going, and I don't know. And it's such a weird concept.
Yeah.
It's great. It's
very good. The first issue, I think, is one of the best first issues we read this year. What I think about when I read this book is that if this book came out 15 years ago, this would be...
Why the Last Man? This
would be a 40 to 60 issue epic, whereas the next issue is the final issue of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see how it can't be unsatisfying. Now, I'm going to obviously give it a chance to be satisfying, and it may be. Ed Brisson may pull it off, but it just feels like this would have been a thing that happened over the course of 5 years in the Vertigo era, either at Vertigo or Image or Boom or whoever, as opposed to a short miniseries that really has to fast forward a lot in what's happening.
I think...
It's still very good, though.
I don't know if it has 40 in it because they're literally disappearing.
These things would be spread out. This all would be happening in 4 issues,
This feels like, as a pitch, and, the realities of publishing, blah, blah, blah. This feels like it could be like a Stillwater. 15, 16 issues. Yeah. It feels at least like that. I'm kind of bummed that there's only one left. I think it's going to be a bummer at the end. I don't see how it isn't.
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying it. So this, it's the town that disappeared, and the people who lived in the town, who weren't in the town at the time, are still around, but no one remembers who they are, and they're starting to disappear. If they leave each other's company, they start to disappear.
It's kind of a zombie book in a way. Like these are like the survivors, but they're still in the world. And they all sort of like splinter and split off. And then, they have their hubris like, oh, you went on your own. And look, we said what happened. And it does happen, and some of, there's like, oh, the rules don't apply. So you figure out different ways to live. I mean, you're right. I wasn't thinking about when I read it, but there really is a lot more to play with here.
This would have been one of those big books back then, but that's just not the way it goes anymore. So it was a small week. Those are the books we wanted to talk about. And if you may notice, Josh, there were not a single traditional superhero book in the mix there.
I noticed that there are a lot of indie books, and I really feel like my indie, which indie, by the way, just so we're clear, means not Marvel DC. My indie book reading is way up lately.
There's more coming out right now. But
we're good
patrons at patreon.com/iFanboy can always vote at a book to the rundown, and they usually vote for an indie book, but this week the tables were turned, and they voted for Doom #1 from Marvel Comics. Sanford Green and Jonathan Hickman on plot, Jonathan Hickman on script, Sanford Green on art, Rachelle Rosenberg with Sanford Green on colors. This is the Sanford Green book. And the always awesome Joe Caramagna on letters. This is an oversized one-shot, possible future tale of Dr. Doom's final battle against Galactus in a future in which, spoilers, Galactus has killed all the heroes and villains, and it's just Doom and Valeria left against Galactus, and the Celestials are in there too.
Not a new concept.
No, not at all.
Yeah, often it's Franklin and not Valeria.
Right. But the Valeria-Doom relationship is so interesting and good.
Yes, 100%.
That's the reason to read. I enjoyed this. I thought the Sanford Green art was terrific. That was, for me, the big draw. Mm-hmm. Comics used to do this all the time. Let's tell a future tale that may or may not ever happen. And so in that sense, I liked it. But, I didn't find it the best thing I'd ever read.
I love Sanford Green.
Yeah, he's terrific.
I don't know that I had known him prior to that. He did a Iron Fist and Luke Cage book a while back with David F. Walker. And I loved that book. It looked so good and fresh and interesting and just alive. The pages here are alive. And I had a really hard time wrapping my head around the fact that Jonathan Hickman did a one-shot.
Right.
It's the most un-Jonathan Hickman thing I've ever heard of. And so when I got to that, I was like, oh, that's the end. That's it. We're just reading the one story. You're not setting up a whole thing. I found it very satisfying. I really liked it. I liked the logic that went into it. I liked how, and I think Hickman, this relationship with Valerian Doom is his. Like, he put that in his Fantastic Four book, unless it existed before that. I don't know. But I know that he definitely developed it quite a bit, from what I understand. I mean, what a great, she is the goddaughter of their greatest enemy and has like feeling for him and vice versa. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. God, I'm looking through it. It's gorgeous. There's a shot.
It's a really good looking book. I was really impressed with the way that Sanford Green made Galactus look giant, even when he was the only person in the panel.
Yeah, that's.
And I don't know how he did that exactly, but even the page 25 where we're looking from below past Galactus to the Celestials, for whatever reason, maybe it's because I just know it, but they just look like bigger than normal people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but I liked his Galactus. It was kind of a grumpy-faced Galactus.
It almost looked like he was zombified here.
Yeah. He's overloaded with power.
Yeah. God, this is gorgeous. There's a page 33 where there's basically a big sort of like a hand-brushed sound effect that goes like a womb.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really linear. I really enjoyed this. I really like, if you look at the drawings of Valeria, if you go a couple of pages past there, page 37, like she's got like bags under her eyes. Like very artfully and sort of minimally, she looks like she's been through some shit. She still looks young.
Yeah.
But like she's a tired young person. Are those super fun?
I don't know where this came from or why it happened, but I thought it was fun. I mean, it felt like a throwback to an earlier age when you could do fun stuff like this.
I gotta say, one of the things to me with Hickman is that he always goes on a little too long for me. Right. Like his ideas spin out of control, and he has so many. The Manhattan Projects, I think, was a good example of that. Where like, wow, what a fun concept. And then 4 issues in, I was like, I'm good. I couldn't take it anymore because I couldn't follow anything. But so you put him in the confines of like 50 pages. And I did not notice this was an oversight issue. So, I mean, I did at one point, but like it didn't feel like it. I flew through it.
The back-to-back double-page spread, 17 and 18, of the heroes and villains all, attacking Galactus and him destroying them all was really insane and well done. And Howard the Duck's in there, and just everybody gets wiped out. The X-Men, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four.
Taskmaster.
It was a beautiful book.
Yeah, it really was. It's another one of those artists, just a delight.
Ratings. Doom. Number 1, Doom. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
I'm vacillating right here between 4.25 and 4.5. I don't think it's a 4.5, but I think it's better. So here we go. 4.37.
4.37.
Yeah.
Sweet.
You know what I mean when I say it's not a 4.5. A 4.5 is pretty darn near perfect.
Right.
But 4.25, that's too low. So there we are. And do you know why I can do that? We make up the rules. I can do whatever I want.
We're not sticking with it because it's all there is. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thanks for being a patron. Every patron gets to vote to add a book to the rundown. Real quick, patreon.com/iFanboy is a great way to help the show if you enjoy what we do and all our various shows. We have 8 shows coming out this month. You can help us there directly. You can get yearly discounts if you don't want to do it month to month. It's all there. All the information's there at patreon.com/iFanboy. iFanboy.threadless.com is our merch store. You can find 13 designs. There's always sales around U.S. holidays. I just bought a couple of shirts myself on the last sale they had. We were just talking the other day about some more designs, but you can find them all there. iFanboy.threadless.com. iFanboy.com/support is our digital PayPal tip jar. iFanboy.com/Amazon. You can find a general shopping link, which helps us out. I haven't looked to see if the links have been fixed yet, but our Booksplode books will be listed there when we fix the links, if not already. Bookshop.org is our partner to help out local bookstores. You order from them. Local bookstores will fulfill your order and send it to you.
You know it's good. It's a .org, for God's sakes.
So check those out. And thanks for supporting the show. Thanks for supporting iFanboy any way you can. If it's only just to listen, we'd appreciate that very much. And finally, if you are a patron and you give at the $5 or higher level, it's a vestige of the old system, but we like it, so we kept it. You get a patron power live on the show. And this week's power goes to Tom Rose. And Josh, Tom Rose's power is that he has stretchy skin. So unlike Mr. Fantastic, whose body stretches, only Tom's skin stretches, but the body stays the same.
Like the thinnest part of the skin, or sort of the whole cutaneous, subcutaneous?
He can control it much like Mr. Fantastic could control his body. It's just the skin that moves and stretches. And
an antipodal or prehensile effect, I believe.
Yeah. So, it sort of comes off of his body and stretches into whatever he needs it to be.
Mm-hmm.
The body still has to stay the same. So it's a bit of body horror.
Much like Mr. Fantastic, but perhaps even more so. It's a little icky.
It's very icky.
It's
I
icky.
apologize, Tom, but that's your lot in life, is the stretchy skin.
There's a sound involved, and I don't like the sound.
It's not a good one. It's not a good one.
Nope.
But useful. Useful, Tom. Thanks for being a patron. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Tom gave you the $5 high level. He had a superpower live in the show. Thank you for doing so.
I'm not going to give it away. It could come back, but I would like to see a power based on the name Useful Tom.
Ooh, Useful Tom.
Yep.
So real quick, before we move on to emails, I want to discuss briefly that the 2024 Eisner nominations were announced this week. And, if you look at sort of the high-profile series and creator nominations, one could almost call these the iFanboy Eisners. But that would be ridiculous because that would require them to listen to a podcast.
Still angry.
If you look, the best continuing series, all have been featured here. Birds of Prey, Nightwing, Shazam, Transformers, Wonder Woman. That's a very mainstream list. Usually they're not that mainstream.
Very much.
Best limited series, The Cull. We talked about that a lot. Superman Lost, we talked about in the beginning. Limited series is only 2 of the 5. Best new series, Beneath the Trees That Nobody Sees. That was Josh's pick week last week. Black Cloak, we talked about a lot.
I read all of Kill Your Darlings. I never talked about it once on the show, but I read the whole thing.
Local Man, Ryan and I love. Phantom Road, Josh and I talk about all the time. Only one of those best new series from Distillery, because I don't even think those books are real. We've not talked about the show. So if you look at best continuing series and best new series, 9 out of the 10 nominees are books we talk about frequently on the show. And then you got best writer, Tom Taylor, Kelly Thompson, Mark Waid, G. Willow Wilson for The Hunger and the Dusk. And then best artist, you got Daniel Warren Johnson, and best writer artist, and then Zoe Thorogood, and then best penciler inker, you've got Dan Mora and Chris Samney. So a lot of iFanboy books in there, and favorites are in there, which is not usual.
Jason Sean Alexander is a name that I have not seen enough over the years.
Jason Sean Alexander, he's been doing Detective Comics, but I haven't been talking about that book because it makes me angry.
Yeah. Great artist, though.
Terrific artist. Other highlights, they brought the press award back after getting rid of it for 1 year.
Because they were like, yeah, we're not going to promote your stuff if you don't give one of us an award.
Right. The same 5 people just keep getting that award because it's hard to listen to podcasts. It's been 20 years almost at this point. But
we lost Tom, I can't remember his last name, good Lord.
Spurgeon.
Tom Spurgeon, who honestly was the best out of any of them, easily.
Yeah.
And so he's not eligible, so not a lot left.
What's interesting is they used to nominate websites, and now, at least for this year, it looks like they're nominating specific columns on websites.
I can get with that.
That's fine with me. I mean, whatever. They don't listen to podcasts, so who gives a shit? Jen Bartel, Best Cover Artist nomination for She-Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
And Fantastic Four, totally shut out. Not a single nomination.
That's great. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's stupid. That's it. I'm boycotting.
I'm actually very curious now because there's a lot of books here I really like that are nominated. So I'll keep my eye out when the awards are given out at Comic-Con in July. Usually there's a bunch of books that I haven't heard of, so I can check them out. But this year it's mostly stuff I'm at least aware of.
A, it does lean more towards mainstream this time. B, I think we've read a lot this year.
There was 1 year, a couple of years ago, where the judges were super niche indie, and most of the books I hadn't even heard of.
Right. It's funny because I said I was going to boycott. I've pretty much already been doing that. I just wasn't thinking about it. It just wasn't on purpose.
Man, one day. We're going to stop doing this, and then they're going to announce a comics podcasting category.
I want one of those post...
You want a Lifetime Achievement Award?
Yeah, I want the one where they we really need to recognize them, and they come back in, and we hobble out on stage.
Me and my walker.
At that point, it's been so long that you and I aren't talking to each other.
Right.
There's something happened.
We're like the police getting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Right. It's like the first time, and then we make up, and then we try to do the show again, but it doesn't work out because we're past it. And we hate each other.
One wrong move, and someone blows up 5 minutes in, and it's over. Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited. There's good people here, and I hope they win. Let's do an email, which I think, Josh, you're going to enjoy. Tim Y writes in and says, here's a question I've been thinking about ever since I saw G.I. Joe toy ads in the 80s. I was in college and wasn't interested in watching the cartoons. Fair enough. The lyrics to the theme song talk about G.I. Joe as one guy, quote, he'll fight for freedom, and quote, a real American hero, etc. And of course, the previous iteration of G.I. Joe was one guy, but in your beloved version from the 80s, it's the name of a group. Do you have any idea about the reason for this mismatch? Perhaps the theme was written before the decision had been made about G.I. Joe being a group, or perhaps the author of the lyrics wasn't in a loop. I assume they must have added the spoken part of the theme later on. Would be interested in hearing your thoughts. I always enjoy hearing you talk about G.I. Joe, even though I'm from a different generation. I do appreciate that because the younger generation doesn't enjoy it as much. But
And yet here we go.
forget them. They're young and they don't have back pain.
They made the song to win the pitch.
Right.
To move forward with everything. So if nothing else, it was early. And if you think about the song, it's crazy to me that the actual song was the thing in there and they didn't read. And I don't remember the origin of the song and who they got to do it or why. But basically Hasbro was reluctant to start this new toy line. And so they played, and the story, it must be apocryphal. They're like, we played the song in the boardroom and that's what did it. And I was like, really? I can't imagine that's the case. But what I'm saying is that it was aimed at these executives who only had an experience of a G.I. Joe who was a he.
I mean, it wasn't even just one guy, though, really. It was a bunch of different single people. But
yes, that is an excellent point. They said he'll fight for freedom, meaning one of the people on the team, completely ignoring Scarlet.
I do mean that for sure. I think you can make the case that they're singing about the individual members of the team if you want to go that way. But even if you go back and look at the original G.I. Joe toys, it wasn't one dude who was in every branch of the military.
Mm-hmm.
It was called G.I. Joe and it was one toy, but there were different people being portrayed. It wasn't just, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't Josh, you were a scuba guy and a Army Ranger and a pilot. Those were all different people. So even original G.I. Joe was about more than just one person.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. They wrote the song to get the pitch, and then maybe the song was written about the one dude. But I never even thought about that until you read this email. And I always just assumed that they were singing about individual members of the team individually.
It could apply to any of them.
Yeah.
Like he'll fight for freedom because he's the guy.
Right.
I think that's probably the most correct.
And G.I. Joe is a real American hero. The members of G.I. Joe are real American heroes, but they're singing about specific people.
And it was for boys.
Right.
They weren't trying to get girls. There was none of that. So he'll fight for freedom. It was a different time, everyone. You got to understand this. But I do think that it is relevant that it came very early in the process.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right that yes, I remember that now that they won the pitch through the song. So I think the song was written as if it was just going to be the same thing again, a singular toy.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, Tim. It takes someone outside the bubble to look into the bubble and realize that something's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, Tim, you need to watch the Toys That Made Us G.I. Joe episode. And I got to tell you, I tried to watch other episodes and I did not give a shit.
Did I watch another? I might have watched another one, but I think I've just watched that one a couple of times.
I want you to know that laughter, it wasn't like, what a nerd. I was like, yeah, I get it. I should do it again, too.
Well, I definitely watched it before we did the G.I. Joe book, Booksplode, because I wanted to make sure I had the details correct. But, it is what it is. I think we have time for another email, even though it's not in the script.
I was going to say there isn't one, Connor.
I know.
It's up to you, man.
I just opened up the email folder here. No, I want to save that one for Ryan.
This has never happened.
I think it's happened.
This is unprecedented, where you have searched for another email to do in the show we're doing.
Oh, that one's too long. I'm looking for a short conversation.
Good Lord.
How about a correction? You want a correction?
Okay. We deserve that.
Tom D wrote in and said, you mentioned R. Crumb and the Underground comics. This was on the Booksplode about Kree-Skrull War. The Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers were done by Gilbert Shelton, who also did Wonder Warthog, a superhero in the Underground. Shelton was clearly influenced by Carl Barks. One can think of the Freak Brothers' adventures as a sort of a combination of the Scrooge adventures and the Fantastic Four, but focused on narcs and the counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
We had said on the show it was R. Crumb who did Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers.
Okay, see, that was just something that's been in my head wrong forever, but it's still the same scene, I believe. So I think the thought remains, but the fact is wrong. Like the theme is.
And he also says, I remember the big impact of Steranko's Nick Fury, but perhaps Adam had, and even Steranko had, a bit less of an impact on those of us who have been reading Kirby if we'd also been reading the Undergrounds, which were, well, psychedelic.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, either way.
Tom is from Vermont.
That was on the Booksplode, talking about Roy Thomas's Kree-Skrull War.
Yeah.
When I say Roy Thomas, because he wrote that script, so he's the one to put the words in there, theoretically.
So there you go. A correction. Let it never be said.
Do you think that Neil Adams was reading The Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers?
I would assume so.
I know Sal Buscema wasn't. I know it.
Neil was young. I think so.
I know it in my bones.
He's got to have been, right?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, contact@ifanboy.com is how Tom and Tim wrote in. Thanks for being email writers. I don't know what
He'll write in emails whenever there's questions. Tom and Tim are there. Tom and Tim.
So you can write in for this show or for the Mediasplode show. If it's for Mediasplode, put in the subject line Mediasplode. But I do want to mention and reiterate that Mediasplode is for non-comics media. Someone wrote in a question about X-Men 97 and put Mediasplode in the subject line. That's not for that show.
I see what you're saying.
That'd be for this show. This is the comics show.
You watch it?
No, I get why he did it because he wrote it to Ron, but
Sure.
Ron's not on the show. He's on the Media Split show, but still.
It's also our show. We can.
I don't think Ron is watching that cartoon, but I don't know for sure.
I'm not, and I don't care. And I don't say that, like dismissively. Like I just literally, like I didn't ever. It's not my thing. I was never.
Also,
into
people
it,
have asked us if we're going to cover it with Animation Brain Trust, and Ryan and Paul are both watching it.
They're of
and
the
enjoying
age.
it. I've given them the option if they want to do a show on it. So it's up to them if that happens or not. It's out of my hands. I've washed my hands of it.
Mhm.
It's up to them. This is the month of lots of shows. 2 weeks ago, we had Booksplode, the one that we just talked about, the Avengers Kree-Skrull War. That's 2 weeks ago. Look for that back in the feed. And then this past week, just a couple of days ago, we had Special Edition Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2. That's the second of 3 parts animated movie of Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then this coming week, we've got a Talksplode. Josh, do you want to reveal, is it Neil Adams?
It's Neil Adams. I recorded this 5 years ago. I did reveal this last week, I believe.
You revealed it on the Discord.
Okay.
Or was it on the show, too?
That was on the show.
I don't remember
Yeah,
anymore.
I talked to Tom King. It's funny because he had a big announcement this week, and I think Connor was like, "You talk about that?" And I was like, "We literally didn't talk about any comics.
Well, I just didn't know if you talked about it after.
We talked about comics, like in general, but not about like comics. No, we didn't talk about it after. I don't think I got any. No, I don't think I got any information. We talked about like our families and life a lot more. You know what? I will. Here's the. I don't know if this is a spoiler. You know what the first question was?
What?
What hurts? And it's a good story. He had an excellent answer for it.
I had a work meeting today where we were waiting for someone to join us. So me and the other guy in the call started talking about what was hurting.
Mhm.
We had a whole long list. And then the guy came by and said, "Oh, we talking about old man stuff?" I said, "Basically, yes." Oh, and then next week, after the Talksplode, we'll have our Media Splode, our May Media Splode. We'll be talking about the late Steve Albini, and we're going to be doing iFanboy at the movies because the three of us have been going to the theater this last month. So we're going to talk about what we've been seeing at the movie theater. Check that out. All of it's available at ifanboy.com.
ifanboy.com. You can find our library of nearly 1,400 shows and counting at ifanboy.com, wherever podcasts are sold. You can follow us at ifanboy comics on Instagram to find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out, and sometimes for the best of the week in panels. But what's important about Instagram is that you don't start looking at it at any point that you have something to do, because the algorithm is fierce. And you'll go, well, just let me look at this. And then before you know it, your life's gone. I can't do it. I did it this morning. I broke my rule. I should never do that in the morning.
Subscribe to youtube.com/ifanboy. And that's where you'll find all of our old video shows, and you'll find this show every week. That's the only way that Josh's son will respect him.
Yeah,
is
it's
if
true.
you like his YouTube videos and you subscribe. And grow those subscriber numbers. And then he'll be like, wait, Dad's a YouTuber? And that'll be a long conversation. A long, disappointing conversation.
I'm the world's worst YouTuber.
Please consider writing us a review or leaving a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We do appreciate it. It helps the algorithm bump the show up and helps people find it. And we do appreciate that. And that's it. We did it.
It's tidy. It's efficient.
I thought we'd be way long on this one, but we
It's a
were
good show.
efficient.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it.
If I might say, joyous, ebullient. Ebullient? How do you pronounce that word?
Very interesting rundown this week.
I liked it.
I didn't even notice it until I started writing the script up. I was like, oh, shit.
It was a light week of comics, but a very fulfilling week of comics, I thought.
I feel like we've had 3 light weeks in a row, and now we're
I
going
had
to
a
get
lot.
hammered.
One of the weeks you said was light was not light for me.
Oh, well. I still feel like we're going to get hammered. We haven't had like a DC week. I think I had 2 DC books this week and 2 last week.
Mhm.
Who knows? I don't know. Whatever. My name's Connor.
I'm Josh.
Bye.